y'all, welcome back to American Honey. I'm Belle Foster, and today's guest is someone I have been really excited to sit down with. Joining me today is Kendall in Kentucky, a Christian influencer and political commentator who uses her platform to speak boldly about faith, culture, and truth. Aside from her voice online, she has an incredibly powerful cancer story that shows resilience, hope, and a deep trust in God even through the hardest seasons. I'm so honored to have her on to share it with us today. I'm so honored to have you on, Kendall. Thank you so much for being on.
Thanks for having me, Belle.
Of course. Yeah, so can you tell me a little bit about your story with cancer and how that season of your life unfolded?
Yeah, so it was about, gosh, my daughter is 10 years old. So maybe 11 years ago, I was really struggling with hearing. My husband and I actually went to an Italian restaurant with our son at the time. We were just a family of three. And the waitress came over and, was checking on us and said, "Can I get you more bread?" And I said, "No, that's okay, but can you bring us more bread?" And after that, my husband was like, "Babe, you did not hear her at all. And over the last few weeks, I've been picking up that you're not hearing things." He really encouraged me to go to an ear, nose, and throat doctor. So I went that week. And at that appointment, I was diagnosed with otosclerosis, which is progressive deafness. And I was told that I would need to have surgery on my ears, on my stapes bone, which is the smallest bone in the human body. So I'm kind of processing that information. And as I am, he said, "While you're here, I'm an ear, nose, and throat doctor. I'd love to give you a full evaluation." And so he was checking on my throat, feeling my throat, immediately felt a bump, and we had it biopsied. We discovered I had thyroid cancer. And so the night before my surgery, my husband came home with a pregnancy test, and he said, "You're pregnant." And I'm like, "How do you know?" Usually I would, tell you that I'm pregnant. But he said, "You've been getting up and going to the bathroom in the middle of the night, and that's something that you did with our son, Jack. It's something that you did with the baby that we had just miscarried. And I don't know if it's Holy Spirit, but I just have a feeling that you're pregnant." So took the test. I completely abandoned the results. I was so confident I wasn't pregnant. Went upstairs. I tucked our son in, and stories kind of lasted a very long time. We did songs, everything came back down, and sure enough, I was pregnant. So 9 o'clock at night, the night before my surgery, my husband and I get on the phone with my doctor and my anesthesiologist, and they assured us that surgery could be done, anesthesia could be adjusted so that myself and baby were both safe. Um, Went in for surgery, and I'm telling you, I had the most incredible doctor. Before they rolled me back, my surgeon and his nurses all laid hands on me and prayed over me. And the presence of the Holy Spirit was in that room. So woke up, and the doctor told me that I had a successful full thyroidectomy, so they completely removed my thyroid. However, my cancer had spread, and I would need radiation. And in order to do radiation, you cannot have a child in your body, otherwise the radiation will attack the body. So I had two choices. I could either abort our child and focus on my health, or I could focus on the baby that God just gave us. And we felt like that wasn't a choice. We felt like God had already made that choice for us when he placed that baby in my womb. So we decided to delay treatment. I gave birth to Presley at a full term, beautiful baby girl, 8 pounds, 7 ounces of just pure perfection. And then I went through a long process. It was about a month of ridding my body of breast milk. So if you have breast milk in your body, the radiation won't attack the cancer, it'll attack the milk. So I went through that process. I also went through a 2 month long process of getting rid of the sodium in my body so that the radiation would again attack the cancer. And I left my brand new baby girl and our 2-year-old son with my husband, and I did radiation. And today I am cancer free, praise God. And I also wear hearing aids because my surgeries for that was not successful. But every time that I put my hearing aids in, I am so thankful for the grace of God and how faithful he is.
Wow, that is so incredible and so powerful. What role did God play in your life when things had to have felt so overwhelming?
Yeah, I think the most important part was we were surrounded with a friends and family group who was so faith-filled. I mean, if I had anybody in my life pressing into me saying, "Your life is more valuable, don't worry about the baby, it's just a clump of cells." Thankfully, I was raised in a household where we knew early on that we were taught early on that life inside the womb is so valuable. And I had so many Bible verses along the way, and just so many people pouring into me from our church. And I felt his presence. And I think it was such a blessing to give me that baby, because I felt like my whole cancer journey. I mean, if you were to ask me about it, there's not much that I can answer. It's like I blacked out on that part because I was so focused on the pregnancy. And I was so focused on just growing that baby that it really took my mind off of cancer. And I've also heard that something about how the human body works, God is so great, but that your body can be fighting those cancer cells even more intensely because of all the hormones that are coursing through your body when you're pregnant.
That's incredible. I did not know that. That's really beautiful. How did your faith influence the decisions you made along your cancer journey and this pregnancy journey?
I had immediately, when they asked us what we wanted to do, I heard the Bible verse that he knit you together in your mother's womb. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. And I knew that God had a purpose for her life. And I thought, what a beautiful testimony that he's given us, something that we can take this story and turn it for his glory. And so I think constantly I was reminding myself that God has created us for these trials. And when we are pushed through the fire and put in these difficult situations, that's when our faith grows. And so instead of being discouraged about it, and let me take that back, there was absolutely moments of discouragement, absolutely moments when Satan was coming for me and I felt like, am I doing the right thing? Am I risking my life? But in those moments, in those quiet spaces, I just felt God whisper that he was with me and that he was going to carry me through this and that we were doing the right thing.
Yeah, wow. He had his hand on your life. And that really leads me to my next question. Looking back, where do you see God's hand in your life where you didn't even realize when you were going through the journey?
I mean, again, in every way, I think even from the minor details of my doctor who laid hands on me, nurses laid hands on me, prayed over me. He was such a blessing in that time. I think God leading me to my hearing loss. If I hadn't had my hearing loss, I don't know when I would have discovered my cancer. When they discovered it, my doctor told me that they took out a baseball-sized tumor out of my throat. And normally that's something that you would like physically see, but it was sitting so far back on my spine that it just wasn't visible. And so I think just the grace in him taking my hearing from me and going into that appointment to figure out what was wrong with my lack of hearing, to discover that there was something even bigger. So I think oftentimes in life we can get so discouraged at these trials, and then we realize, like, when you take a step back and look at the whole picture, there was God's provision. God's hand was over that. God was protecting you from something. And when you're in the moment, it doesn't feel like it, but he is walking alongside you and he is protecting you and he is giving you favor.
Yeah, a lot of the time I just feel like we blame God for so much stuff, and God's not the creator of evil, but God will take things from you and you just don't understand how he's working in your life yet.
Yeah, and I often tell people, I mean, with all of the stories that my husband and I have had, my husband was also diagnosed with cancer at one time. We've had multiple miscarriages. And I think through all of those times, while I wouldn't wish that on anybody, those are the moments that I can pinpoint in my life where I'll look back and realize that's when I was walking closest with God, or that's when there's just one set of footprints because he was carrying me through that.
That's really incredible. What gave you the courage to be so open about such a personal time in your life?
I think there was a couple of things leading up to it. I have always had such a strong voice. God just instilled that in me. And I was the talker in the classroom. I was the one that, my parents got phone calls from the school because Kendall was talking. And when we would go on youth group trips for our mission trip or to church camp, I was the one that was talking. But I think God used that voice in me in such a big way. And I've kind of always shared that story because I do feel like God gave me a testimony and I don't want it to go to waste. Um, However, when I decided to start social media, gosh, when did COVID happen? Has it been 6 years, 5 years ago, 6 years ago? I got on social media and I really tried to be something that I wasn't. I was showing pictures of my kids. We were all dressed in matching outfits and I thought this was really cute. And it just fell on flat ears because it wasn't authentically me. And when COVID hit, I decided to use that time. I got on my social media and I talked about just what was going on in the world and how wild it was, and how, you have to walk north to buy your milk, but you had to walk south, to buy your bread. And I was talking about how you don't have to wear masks in the grocery store. And someone saw me doing that and it empowered them. And my social media started to grow. And so I realized whatever story God gives me, I am going to continue to pour it out there. And as long as God gives me an audience and ears to hear it, then I will continue to speak. And I think that's what gave me the most courage.
That's really amazing. And you don't hear about a lot of stories where people say, well, that social media isn't really like what we were posting on social media. That's not really me. I want to be more authentic. A lot of people just try and fake their their life and they put it on social media and they want people to think that this is their perfect life. And you've had such an incredible story, and there have been so many ups and so many downs, and you've turned it into something that's so authentic, but it's not fake, and it's beautiful.
And I think that's what's gained my following is people do like authenticity. People like rawness. It's relatable. I mean, when you see, social media personalities online with things that are just not attainable, so many people message me and they're like, you have such a beautiful marriage. I wish I had that. I can't get that. And I like to remind them that social media is a highlight reel. My husband and I have a beautiful marriage, but we fight too, like just like any couple. We've just chosen never to use the D word, divorce. We've chosen to work on any problems that we have. So yeah, I think social media can be a blessing, but it can also be very deceitful, and it can be something that you want to attain. You want to attain this other person's life that seems to be, so perfect, but it's not. And we are all fallen people. We are all in need of a savior, and we are all struggling. So I think the more realness you can bring, the the better response you get.
Yeah, and I think, well, the Bible says don't be jealous of sinners, and I think everyone's a sinner. And so I think we really fall into this, especially with social media, we fall into this mentality where it's like, I have to be like her. She has more followers than me. I have to be like her. I have to do what she's doing. And just be yourself. And that's how people are gonna like you. The people who connect with you, the people who you relate to, those are people that are gonna follow you. If they wanted to follow that exact person, they would follow that person. You'll get your own following. And you've done such a great job with that. And you've had a really, your life has been full of, you had your pregnancy while you had cancer, you've had miscarriages. What do you think abortion, this abortion idea has done to America?
I think we live in such a selfish community. We live in this very me centric, me focused world where we need to do what's best for us. Mom needs to do what's best for her. And yet, on the other side of that coin, if a dad was to leave the house because he wanted to go be with his mistress because that was best for him and not pay child support, we condemn him for that. So there's such a double standard. I feel like life is valuable from the moment of conception. We are not to play God, and that's, I think, a very dangerous world that we step into. And I don't believe that a child's worth is based on how a child is conceived does not determine his or her worth. Though if your desire or lack of for that child does not determine his or her right to life. And we're playing in this world where, again, it's so me focused that we tend to forget that someone needs to be a voice for the unborn.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, they don't have a voice. And I think feminism, modern feminism, has really played into this where we think it's just feminism. I'm doing what's best for me. I'm a woman. It's just feminism. And we hear this a lot that our body, our choice, it's the woman's choice. And it's not, because one, it's not your body. There's two people that are needed to create a child. So what do you think feminism has done to the abortion industry?
Oh my gosh. I mean, again, it goes back to so me centered, me focused. I think the other thing that the abortion industry has done has tried to push the women outside of the household. So we've now changed back in the day in the 1950s, it was traditional gender roles. And as again, we could go into so many different places, but when we talk about marriage, which is the union of a man and a woman, a male and a female, XX and XY chromosomes, that was done on purpose. God did that so intentionally because we are uniquely different. When a child comes home from school, I believe that a child needs to come home to a loving mother, and that mother will pour into that child, pray over that child, talk to them about their day, feed them a nutritious meal. And instead, our society is saying, mom needs to go back to work because there's no way that you can afford this lifestyle on just one income. And then TV, things like Netflix and Disney are raising our children, and our children are going home and they're being filled with this horrible food that's poisoning them because mom is not present in the household. And then I think it's so important to put those traditional gender roles back in place. Mom is the nurturer, and dad is the protector and the provider. And again, when you run down these rabbit holes, we've completely gotten rid of masculinity. Masculinity is somehow toxic now, and so it's horrible. Yeah, I think I mean, I went off on a tangent, but I think we've gone so far from the movement. I don't even think we can call it feminism anymore because it's doing nothing for our for our group of women.
Yeah, it's been feminism has gotten so twisted. And I don't see why people have such a problem with wanting to say we should be able to have a household where the mom gets to stay home. It shouldn't be the mom has to stay home with her kids. We've turned children, and my platform, I want to speak to the youth, and one of my biggest concerns is that we've turned children into this curse that we don't want children. Children are a bad thing. And I think that's why we tend to push them out of conversations. We tend to say, "Oh, you don't need to talk about that. We don't want to parents don't want to be home with them." And I think that's where feminism has been twisted. I think that's where the abortion industry has really gotten big because we changed the narrative that children aren't a blessing anymore and children are this this curse that we just have to. And so people like to say, why wouldn't it be okay to say we want to be able to have households where the dad can go to work and the mom gets to stay home with the kids and raise her kids? We turn that into a bad thing when it shouldn't be the mom has to stay home. It should be the mom gets to stay home.
I mean, I was so blessed to be able to stay home with my babies. And when my husband and I got married, we were broke as a joke, but we made conscious choices to do whatever we could so that I could stay home with our children. We lived in a smaller home. We didn't eat out. We didn't have the luxuries of, I wasn't getting my nails done. And since our situation has changed dramatically, and God has blessed us because I was able to stay home with our children. But being a mother and being a father, but I really think being a mother, you have to put yourself on the back burner. And those few years, it goes by so quickly, but it is so crucial for you to pour into your children. And so my plea would be if you cannot afford to have children, meaning if you cannot afford to raise them, don't have children. And I think that that is probably a very controversial topic and unpopular opinion. But if you are not prepared to raise those children, you should not be having children.
Yeah, and I would just say that if you can't, if you want, if you're gonna have a child, don't even if you're gonna do things, don't even put abortion in your mind. Don't even that take that out of an option. That shouldn't even be an option. And if something does happen, then at the best, or I'm sorry, at the least, go the adoption route. But don't abortion shouldn't be even an option.
Well, and I think it becomes an option because, especially in public schools, they are pushing so hard for safe sex instead of pushing hard for abstinence. And people tell me all the time, you're prude, they're
Mm-hmm.
going to have sex, so let's at least give them condoms so they can do it in a healthy way. My children aren't. And I can say that strongly because I hold them to a higher standard. You don't have sex until you're married. My parents held me to that standard. I remained a virgin until I was married. It was the biggest blessing that I could give, not only to my husband, but to myself. And I looked at it as so empowering. I know there's women out there who are like, all about their body count and how many men that they've slept with and vice versa for the males. But I think it's so empowering to be able to hold off and to not give into that temptation, not give into the sin of sex outside of marriage, and give that blessing to your spouse and really give that blessing to your children because that'll be something that generationally can change in a home.
Yeah, and I would even say being a freshman in high school, I would even say stop just dating around. Stop dating if you need to, because dating is not biblical at all. And I'm not saying that you should never date anyone, but why are we dating in middle school? Why are we dating when you don't see any future with this person and you have no plans to go any farther with this person? I've had friends who I've never had a boyfriend, and I find that again very, or like what you were saying, I find that very empowering that I've never had a boyfriend, that I've never given myself to someone who I don't see a future with yet. And I want to wait until I can see, because I want to date to marry. And I'm not going to date to marry as a freshman in high school. And if you're going to date someone, at least see a future with them.
So my son is 13, and we had this conversation recently too because a lot of his friends are dating. He's not. And we've talked about how, honestly, in middle school, and it can bleed into high school, but in middle school, you date somebody, and then it's just bound for breakup, and then you are the talk and the gossip of the school. Where I think it's better to be the talk and the gossip of the school of the person who's never been with someone, because that's a prize. I mean, you think of that. I remember there were boys in my high school who wanted to sleep with me. I didn't. And it's because you become a prize. You become something that's unattainable and you're saving that for your husband. But I do think in the home, and your mama is doing such a great job of that, but talking about sex at such an early age is powerful. And you've got to make it so it's not this yucky, dirty thing. It's a beautiful thing when it's done in the concept of in the context of marriage. And that's what we need to be teaching our youth. And I love that you're talking about it because it can kind of be a weird topic. But when you can get younger people talking about it with their friends, that's so powerful.
Yeah, for sure. And feminism, their whole branding, I for lack of a better word, is empowerment, and we're empowering ourselves. And when you look into what they say is empowering them, it's how many people you can sleep with. Don't let a man tell me what to do. I'll sleep with whoever I want. I want my body count as high as it can possibly get. That's not empowerment. And we've made ourselves so much less valuable. Because, like what you were just saying, when you become so much more valuable, especially, or to men specifically, and just as a whole, you're so much more valuable when you've saved yourself, when you haven't been with anyone before and you give yourself to one person for the rest of your life. That is so powerful. So, in your view, what does empowerment look like for women?
Well, first I'll say, yeah, not only is it not empowering, but it's trashy. Like, and I know that's controversial, but it's trashy. And so I wish we could bring back like a more wholesome character. But empowerment to me is someone who can stand boldly and authentically on who God created them to be and be that person to others. I think it's empowering to, again, remain a virgin until your wedding night. I think it's empowering to get married young. I think it's empowering to have lots of babies. And I think it can really be empowering for a woman to go back into the workplace. But there is a time and a place for that. And I don't think that season is when she's of childbearing years.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we've just made ourselves so we say it's empowering, and we say that we're not letting anyone tell us what to do, when really you're doing nothing abnormal. You're doing nothing special. You're literally just following along with what every other girl is doing. And it's so empowering to be the outlier and to be different and to have a good head on your shoulders and to have moral values and not just do whatever you want because you think it's empowering. Because it's not empowering. You're doing what everyone else is doing. You're not standing out at all.
I think we've also seen this big wave in your generation where so many kids have decided to remain sober. They're not turning to alcohol. and they're choosing to be sober. And I think that's a really beautiful thing to watch unfold too, because there was this generation that turned to it for
I
everything.
agree.
And now we're seeing a generation that is opening their Bible or is going to the gym or they're pouring into relationships with their friends instead of going to the route of alcohol and destroying their minds.
I agree, and I think it is really important to point out how amazing and how great this generation is being and growing it because we are turning to our Bibles at an amazing rate, and we are like you just said, we are going to the gym a lot, and that seems like such a little thing, but I mean, our bodies are temples, and when you turn to things like the gym instead of alcohol and instead of vaping and instead of sex and you're doing good things for your body and you're pouring into your friends like you just said and you're having these Bible studies. I mean, there's a huge influx of people going to the church. And it's so important that we do that because you have to have this foundation, your rock. And I think a lot of the time, um, a lot of generations before ours have really just turned away from that. And I think we're starting to see generations come back to the rock.